October 21st, 2021 meeting for the Keizer Traffic Safety, Bikeways, Pedestrian Committee. First order would be approval of the minutes from the September 2021 meeting. Do we have any comments or motion to approve? Rick?
It's just a small thing, but where it says traffic systems plan, Debbie, that should be transportation systems plan.
Where is that? What page?
It's where...
Oh, it's a second page under
the
Rick's
comments that I
comment.
made.
Oh.
Wherever that was. Yeah, right here. Second page, kind of the middle.
Okay, transfer here.
Okay. With that amendment, do we have a motion to approve?
I move with the amendment to accept the minutes from the September meeting.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion from David, a second from Jamie. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining?
I will abstain, having been here last time.
Okay. All right, next, we'll move on to the appearance of interested citizens, and this is a time for someone in the public to come and talk about an issue that is not on the agenda currently.
Is anybody signed up?
Did anyone sign up? Nobody signed up? Okay.
You'd like to talk?
All right, so as you'll notice on our agenda tonight, there's a couple of things that we're gonna have some speakers who unfortunately are not able to make it tonight. That would be for the Safe Routes to School Project Identification Grant, and that also the ODOT Infrastructure Grants. Both of those sets of speakers are not able to make it tonight. They shall be here next month, Debbie?
Yes, that's what they want to do.
Okay, so we'll just push that onto the next month's agenda. The next one would be the Cummings Lane sidewalks and zero right-of-way discussion. Here's to Joe.
Well, with school starting up again and kids walking and stuff, I wanted to again look at that improvement that the city made on Delight. And is there a parking problem? Cars parking during the school hours? What was the agreement with the residents there?
Do we remember?
I don't.
The agreement was...
We kind of let it drop after COVID hit and all the kids were gone, so. Mike, I'm sorry.
No, it's the agreement was, at the time, no parking signs were not going to be installed, and we were going to gauge it, and we would go just see how things worked out and what it looked like, and go from there. So it was not staged at the beginning to have no parking signs. It was to look into further as time went on.
Unfortunately, COVID hit and there was no kids there for 18 months, but now they're coming back. So I guess I'm asking, can we start the evaluation?
What do we need? See if I remember this right vaguely. So who evaluates whether or not we need no parking signs? Is that you, Mike?
No, good question. If it comes from the citizens that live along there, if it comes from people driving by, it just comes from parents, it comes from, I know a lot of parents drop kids off there and they use that, and it is a high traffic volume during the day.
But we have, so we're going to be complaint driven?
That's the way I took it.
Okay.
From when it was put out there, so.
Has anyone happened to notice? Been around there, seen it?
Okay.
It's still, really early because there's kids walking both ways, mostly to Mcnairy. Clearly, the kids aren't walking out in Cummings Lane like they used to, so that's a wonderful thing. As far as parking is concerned, I haven't been right there during the school times. And when I'm talking about school times, in the morning and the afternoon.
So school starts at 9,
Elementary,
8:45, and they get out, I know middle school gets out at
It's
4.
either 2:45 or 3. Could possibly go 3:15.
So 8:30 to 3:15.
Yeah, about that. Every school's a little different.
yeah.
I know that was an issue that's almost 2 years ago that we talked about it, I think. You know, I thought with school back starting up, maybe we should ask that question again.
I've been there a couple times throughout this time during school time, or excuse me, when the kids are either going to school or coming back, and they're not walking in the street anymore like they were, and they're off to the side, and they're utilizing that, so that's good. Even if there's a car here or there, they're, you know, kids will be kids, but they're pretty much staying right in there. And right now, I don't see it as a big problem, because what I've seen is being used. So
Yeah, unfortunately, my son has graduated, so I'm not going down that
Yeah.
street anymore.
So great when they graduate.
Yes.
Well, thanks, Mike. That was a kind of a contentious issue, especially from the committee, because we didn't want to create a parking lot with that.
Do we anywhere in the city have no parking between 8 and 4:30 or something?
not that I know of, no.
Okay, so that's a,
Cause I know some
well, I
schools
just.
have that in
yeah.
Salem Keizer district. but
Yeah,
not-
no parking during,
Yeah.
No, I don't.
okay.
Beyond the no parking signs, if it's determined to be a problem, maybe another low-cost fix would be those, I'm trying to think what they're called. They're like the bollards, but they're the more floppy ones.
Flexible boulders.
Yeah. Putting a row of those adjacent to the pathway between the road and the white.
We need to find out if there's a problem, yeah.
Well-
Right.
There's a number of driveways there, so
On the east side,
be the west side.
okay.
Along that.
The pathway is on the west side.
Yeah,
And but by the school, there'd be no parkway, or driveways, right?
is anybody on
Yeah.
social basis with the principal of that school? Principal of Con?
No, excuse me.
Does anybody know the principal of Cummings? Okay,
I don't.
so everybody.
Carol does. Carol does.
Carol?
Yeah.
Yeah, you do.
But,
Want me to speak to this? Because I can.
Sure.
Not very appropriate, I guess, but I'm just like, okay.
Well, how does that work there, Debbie? Can we have?
Fine.
Okay.
So, I'm Carol Dorfler from the West Keizer Neighborhood Association, and we have a member of the board who lives on Delight, and so he's kind of been keeping an eye out for what's been happening there since that pathway has been put in. And while the kids were out of school, there were quite a few vehicles parked along there. And it was kind of scattered. Sometimes there would be a lot and then there wouldn't be so many. And one was there with a for sale sign on it for a long time and then it disappeared. So once the kids got back to school, Art really started paying attention. And I was on my bike on nice days trying to keep an eye on things. And there might be a car or two parked along that pathway, but I did see the kids just kind of step around it and get around it safely, and they went. And even the Mcnairy kids are using that pathway now. I didn't see any, but Art reported that at the board meeting and at our general meeting last week. So I don't think, hopefully crossing our fingers, that we'll have to go to that measure of putting up the no parking signs, but we are keeping an eye on it, Hirsch.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
okay, that's taken care of.
Okay, so anything else?
No, that was we'll just keep watching and keep our fingers crossed. And I think it's just, even though it wasn't the big project that we would have loved to have, the kids are using it. And that's the key. That was our whole purpose, was for the kids.
Yeah. Okay, so the next thing is the SCATS project solicitation. I'll pull that up on my phone here. Sorry, 1 second. Here. So the Salem Keizer area transportation, they sent a letter at the beginning of the month for transportation project solicitation. And there's a pre-app that may be submitted electronically by December 1st. Final apps, February 25th. There's, looks like, if I'm reading this right, $8+ million of funds, but the amount is subject to pending legislation. But, you know.
Grants for what?
So they have, apply for Federal Surface Transportation Block Grant Program funds, Transportation Alternative Urban funds, and Congestion Management and Air Quality Improvement Program funds for fiscal years 2024 through 2029, their transportation improvement program. And that they'll award funds from all three of those sources. Says successful applications will be programmed with either the block grant funds, transportation alternative funds, or other identified program funds, or combination as recommended by SCATS staff and SCATS Technical Advisory Committee and approved by the SCATS Policy Committee. I know we've talked repeatedly about trying to find money, and one of the things that we'll be doing soon will be that project identification grant through Safe Routes to School. But I know we also have some other projects that we've identified. So my thoughts are this is something that we should be trying to grab something.
Mike, is Public Works people, I'm assuming you're aware of the grant. Are we doing anything about it?
Not at this moment, we're just focused on putting things together for the bridge project coming up here.
Okay.
Federal grant we're getting, and ODOT's doing that, but we have oversight and the planning palette and things we want along.
Okay. So we're not looking at anything else in addition to that?
So I don't know, the matching requirements on this. There's several links within the attachment that Debbie included with the agenda, or with the packet. How do people feel about trying to get some?
I kind of feel like it's too early. Like, we only have less than 2 months to put something together, and at this point, we don't even know. I would like to see this group really look forward to next year. We really are out of time, and if it was going to have to allocate money, it would need to be put into a budget, and if we have to line those two things up to ask council, then we need to look a little further ahead. So if we were looking for December 2022 to put something in there, and I think that might even be a little too early because we haven't even done our structure of what's our priorities. That's gonna take at least 3 meetings before we probably pull all that together. That's just my guesstimate. If, let's say in 3 meetings, that puts us to January, and within 3 more months to pass it through council to agree to meet any type of financial commitment that would need to be on the city's behalf, that would be pushing it a bit, but we could try. I mean, at least if we pulled it up this time, went to council, asked for it before February, March was up, March by the latest, and they said yes, then great, maybe they could allocate funds to that. But if they said no, at least we could ask the questions of why no, and then correct that so that 2023's budget could have something in there if this is even an opportunity for us. Then I just see that we're pulling December 2021 is just too early in my eyes. And we don't even have anything identified.
Harsh, yeah.
I kind of think you're on the right track. The long-range planning for the budget, first meetings is Monday evening. And as far as our current budget, it's pretty tight. And for matching funds and things like that, I'm not sure. We could always ask the council if there's any, especially closer to the end of the fiscal year, there might be a penny or two, but then that's past this. But to get it into the budget process, whether we are successful for this year or 23, at least get it started.
Yeah.
But we need projects, real projects that Public Works can say, yes, we're going to need this amount of money, here's the match, all that. And that takes them some time to do too.
And they've been
But
thinking about-
I think the effort, what you're talking about is a good thing.
Yes.
It's just timing.
And I do think that one of our first lists that I remember that we came up with for Public Works, they have a list of items that, and it's included in there. We did put stars next to them, and I do believe some of them have been addressed. I would have to bring it to the next meeting to remember what that list was and what kudos we can go ahead and give to Mike over there that it's already been taken care of. But I do think that if we could identify what our top 3 to 5 are and see if council has any of those items, then we can hone in a little bit closer to a win, you know, of what we're looking to get done.
Yeah, we had done this list, we've gone through a couple of rounds of prioritizing projects, and I think this was the most recent one, where we had identified a group of projects that were the committee's highest priority. Some of them were also included in the transportation project, the plan for Keizer. And whether these are things, again, that we would want to pursue in this context. I think we've done that sort of basic groundwork. Now it's deciding, well, is there something here that would fall within the whatever the budgetary constraints are, and what SCATs would be interested in, and what the city council would approve. I think that's always one of the tricky parts in this is navigating it through council. But this, we do have this to as a
sidewalk
source.
connectivity. I'm reading off of Stephen's paper.
On that research that I shared last time, there were like 20 projects in there that weren't not constructed yet. Now, I don't know, is the funding for those already identified, or could some of those be candidates for this?
I think before Mike go, we had identified these projects, and we had also identified those that are included in the transportation system plan. So some of the things that we had identified as priorities were also already in the plan, but I don't know, Mike.
So knowing the funding, but I do know, I questioned Bill this afternoon actually about VERTA and how did that come about and how did we get to where we're at? And that came about many years ago. There was a committee put together and there were votes made and it was decided upon and it was kind of earmarked to over here, and then time has passed and now now we're there, which is, what'll be probably 23 or 24, and asking, well, are there other ones, out there like that? And there weren't. So that'll take a recommendation and like the list that you all keep talking about, and then looking at that and going from there and deciding where do we go, and then where does that go? How does that play out? How many years from now? And getting the funding to do that. So.
Rich, did you say you made a list? Maybe I might not have been here to see that list at one of those meetings.
Say that again.
Did you have a list that you created? Because I heard you just say that, and maybe I wasn't at that meeting that you're talking about.
I sent it out to everybody last month.
Last month?
Yeah, I just looked at the projects that are already in the TSP and then drove around to see how many were actually built.
Okay.
And there were only 3 that were built, so there's 20 that are not constructed yet.
Okay.
Like one of my pet ones that I want eventually to happen is in the TSP, and that's Windsor Island.
Yeah, Windsor Island is one of our.
That was our number one priority on the committee's list.
Because not only would we get sidewalks where they're needed, it's a connector and on and on and on.
So that could be one of our top priorities. Maybe we identify that as one.
The 2 that we identified as priorities and that were also already in the transportation system plan were the Windsor Island project and Manbrin, the west side of River Road to Shoreline, replacing the sidewalk there.
So I'm not sure, and it's not clear to me from my scanning of this, if there's a minimum threshold we could be asking for, or maximum, if it's infrastructure, like, we've been talking about these blinking signs that would increase potentially the safety of our streets that are also low cost, and I would think something like this would be able to cover the cost of half a dozen. I haven't seen the list from the city manager, but I did put that request. I don't know if either Sergeant Leday or Mike have that list yet, but
I can speak to it.
Okay.
If you want to know now.
I guess if you have it, yeah.
Okay. So in order to fulfill your request, I would have had to handpick through 3,600 citations.
All right.
So we chose not to give the timelines and go through the 3,600 and put them off into piles of the top 5. That being said, we've come up with the top 5 that I'm sure most people would actually agree with as far as the priority goes. Our number 1 would actually be Dearborn Northeast, as far as its usability and its effectiveness for citizens in that speed aspect. The second one, which might be a surprise to some of you, but it would also be Alder Drive Northeast, and that's because of the 2 middle schools that we have that's heavily traveled. McLeod Lane Northeast would be our 3rd. Cummings Lane North would be our 4th. And Verta Lane Northeast, and that would be in between Shamawa and Lockhaven, that stretch of Verta Lane. We did throw 2 more segments in as far as the possible consideration over the top 5, and one was Dearborn North, and the other one was Mandarin Street Northeast. And as far as looking at considerations, we looked at what the feasibility, as far as being able to put an LED lit speed limit sign and its effectiveness as far as people seeing something like that, we feel that those would probably be the most beneficial areas.
Okay, thank you for that. So, hearing that, if it's an option that we could apply for money for these sorts of things, I would expect that the funds we would get would cover the entire cost based on what Sergeant Leday had shown me that one day, after one meeting, and it was, I think, what, $800 a piece?
$8.99 a piece, I want to say.
Okay, so 900 times 2, that's 1,800 if you're looking at each.
Speed limit.
For the speed limit sign that blinks as you're going over the speed limit. It doesn't show your number, it
No,
just
no.
shows that you're going
No,
above.
it
It's like
He's saying no also.
So no, it doesn't flash your speed. 'Cause
Right,
that
it
would
doesn't,
actually be
it just
speed
flashes
measured.
that you're going.
What it does is it has the posted speed limit sign and it has LEDs around it that have continual movement to grasp your attention.
Yeah.
Right, right. Yeah, so,
It's not the one that tells you your speed.
it doesn't tell you your speed, but it does tell you that you are speeding. And I can't remember, does that have where you can adjust how far, is it like as soon as you go 1 mile over, it blinks or?
So again, that would be a speed measuring device that you would go into and that increased our cost
Way up
tenfold.
over 800.
So complete apples and oranges as far as what we're talking about in that. So if we do any speed measuring device, meaning that it's radar equipped, I want to say what we're going into that 6,000 to 8,000
Right.
range close to.
So how does that know you're going too fast then?
This,
That blinker thing?
Mike, it blinks 100% of the
Oh, that's it? Oh, it just blinks?
Just blinks saying, hey, look at me.
Oh, okay, I got you.
so instead of having like orange flags that come off a speed limit sign to try and get your attention, it doesn't do anything. So it works, a little bit, but with the LED, there's always a constant movement. So it grasps the eye's attention. So when people are in a residential area, all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay, I'm in a residential area, or
Okay.
whatever that posted limit is.
Okay, so that was my misunderstanding then, but
Yeah.
still
800
something
apiece.
800 apiece. So 1,600, well, 900 apiece, so not 1,800. The street, you're looking at a total of about $10,000
How many?
for 5 of these top 5.
Well, 5 times, would you say 800?
It's $900 a
900
piece.
times 5 is 4,500.
Right, but you're gonna have them on both sides of the street. So people go
Okay,
both
so you
ways.
really want 10 of them.
Right. So,
And depending upon where you go, you may, like for Dearborn, I would recommend that we would have 4, and you would have right in between, right when you come off of River Road, within probably the first 300-400 feet, and then also when you come off of Verda, and it would be in those both directions. So some of these streets, most likely, you may need to equip with Ford on those distances.
yeah. So we can assume a minimum of 10, but probably more.
Maybe.
But if we're looking at some project or program that would fund the entire cost of those, then we'd just be looking at staff time to install. And I don't know if you have a ballpark on that per sign, like if it's, because I assume it has to have some type of power to it unless it's solar powered,
They're solar.
solar powered. Okay.
Mike, if for somehow or other, somebody angel drifted down and gave us 10 grand and we got 10 of these signs, can you install, are those so difficult to install, we need a budget item to cover them, or could you install most of them during a year or year and a half?
We'd fit them in a couple hours. a
Yeah, here
piece.
and there.
You call locate, you go there, you put in a metal telspar that's a breakaway, probably, I assume we mounted on that. And I mean, normal street signs, 4x4s, we figure an hour a piece, so this might be a
Okay.
little bit more. It might be a little more intensive, but
So
not
we
a
wouldn't
lot.
have to budget for public works time.
I don't,
Thank you. But we wouldn't necessarily have them all done in one day.
No, that's true.
unless you come and help.
Sure, I'll hold a flag, yeah.
But, yeah, something like that.
Okay.
Can I bring something up real
Please.
quick? So I was just looking at the report for the sidewalk connectivity, and with the top 7 that, what's his name? Sergeant Leday gave us, there was 4 that I actually came up that were starred on ours that identified in there. So this is potential safety of those 4 areas.
Absolutely,
With the
yeah.
sidewalk activity. So that's kind of bringing a couple more better reasonings to maybe even get those sidewalks done, plus slow down the speeding in those areas that we've identified.
Yeah, but are you suggesting we would apply for both of them under the same grant possible?
Well, if they have $8 million that they're doling out, $10,000 is not probably something that they want from us. So I think we'd have to beefing it up a little bit, but I have to read what
Yeah.
you're.
So it says it's up to 8 million, but then there's, let me see.
Oh, I thought it was 8 million, they had to give.
No, that's what they have available, but they have, 500,000 for the, transportation alternatives program, this is 4.5 million in the congestion management and air quality improvement.
And I recall last year, or a couple months ago, when we saw what they awarded, I think the lowest one was like 75 grand, wasn't it? If I recall.
I don't remember that.
Okay.
I think that was the Safe Routes to School monies.
Yeah.
Okay, that could be. I'm just all over the place.
So, what is the feeling amongst everyone here about putting in for, if it worked, if it's something that could fit, and we could contact Mike or someone at the area, SCATS, and see if it would fit under this program.
Again, I think we're pushing something too fast.
Well,
Yeah.
it's a short term.
This is
Yeah.
short-term turnaround, though. This is just signs that,
Could talk about it, but there are possibly other funding sources through ODOT, traffic safety.
How about this? What if we at least give a memo to council identifying our high impact speeding/safety concerns? That would be the best way to start, if you ask me. Am I volunteering?
No,
you might have volunteered yourself, but
it never hurts
I think,
to ask.
or at least identify.
Right,
and
I
have
don't
them
think it ever hurts to ask.
know what we've come up with, because this is good details. This is really good details that we know that there's speeding area and a sidewalk issue, and that hits 2 out of the 3. It's probably a bike one too, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, yeah, of course,
Yeah.
that's automatically on that. It never hurts to ask because that's possibly setting a seed for future deliberations.
Yeah.
As Mike talked about the Verda taking several years, yes, it did.
Yeah, right.
The Verda Lane project was well before,
2016 is when it was approved.
yeah, but we started talking about it in 2012.
Wow,
So, yeah.
this has been years. Okay.
Well, I do think that this also brings up the thing about, as Mike was saying, this particular thing has a tight turnaround. Some of these things do. So I think that one of the things we as a committee need to do is have our list of projects kind of fairly well developed so that when one of these opportunities arises, we'll have, we maybe have them teed up here, but also be able to, in reporting to the city council, have them teed up there so that nobody's taken by surprise when they say, oh, here's this opportunity for money. This is something we've identified as a priority. We've told you folks about it before.
Strategic.
Maybe money's been set aside so that we're in a position to take advantage of some of these opportunities when they do arise like this.
So, should I go ahead and take a stab at it and get that first memo over to you? You
Yeah.
can help revise it, and then we'll give it to the committee to review, and if we can
Yeah.
all agree.
To the city council.
yeah, and
I'll
so,
take a stab at it.
jumping ahead in the agenda, we have reporting to council and attending the planning commission would be Wayne. We could split that, and once the list is done, you could do the council report, and Wayne can do the,
No, if she's going to do a memo, it really needs to be, and she talks about approving it, you can't do that via email. You would need to do that at your November meeting, but whoever reports at the November council meeting could then present that to council as something that is from the whole committee.
You're moving a little fast for me, Debbie. I think I could bring it back, you're saying bring it back to this committee in November for approval? Oh, okay, and then going to
And
council
then, yeah,
at the
then it
next
would
meeting.
go to, then whoever was reporting in November to the council meeting would, you would move a motion at this meeting as well, so that that would be in the minutes, and then that could be brought forward to council, and they would have the list, and you could go from there. Regarding the grant part, I'm just going to share a little bit, because the Arts Commission is really working hard at getting grants for artwork. And what they're doing, which I think is a pretty valid way of doing it, is they're like doing a template of a grant and having all the blanks that are generic filled in already. So all they need to do is punch in projects when these different ones come out. So, and that might be something this committee might excuse me, might want to explore, getting something like that already so that when an opportunity like this comes up, it's not quite so overwhelming.
Right. Now, I started that 2 months ago with the Safe Routes to School when I got, but it wasn't the official current one, so it was really just kind of the generic, well, not the generic, but a previous iteration of the application. So I was trying just to fill in the boxes that I knew were going to be rollovers, but
I do think we have possibly a timing problem, because it looks like the next city council meeting is on November 1st.
Is that council
Yeah,
or
but
is
there's a
that?
second one.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Yeah,
I'm
that's-
looking at, so
No.
reporting
you're right, it
to, yeah.
so we'd be doing
And
the
then
one,
the
the
planning
following
commission.
meeting after that.
So
So
December.
which is December, which is when, I mean,
Yeah.
at least with regard to this particular thing, anything would
We're
need to be
missing.
done. So I think, again, that militates against really getting anything done with this particular funding program, but I think it is important that we start getting these things teed up and so doing that so that the report can take place at the December.
Mr.
Council
Chairman,
meeting.
may I make a suggestion?
Please.
So the mayor knows this stuff backwards and forwards.
She's on SCAT.
Yes, and I'm the alternate to SCATS and the MWAC. I think my suggestion is that somebody contact the mayor and ask her about these particular grants. And if going down this road, if we're even eligible for them, if what you're talking about doing is even eligible, because she's gonna know as well, if not better, certainly better than anyone here, but as well as anyone. I would suggest doing that first, because I'd hate to see you guys go through a bunch of work and then only to find out that, it never had a chance in the first place, right? Because a lot of these funds, even though they've got, 11.5 million or 12 million, something like that, they're probably somebody's already got their eyes on them, right?
If not half of it, right?
If not, yeah, exactly.
I like that approach, and I would definitely be willing to
Yeah.
talk to the mayor first and then be.
And I would I'm just gonna warn you, you start her talking about transportation
Yeah.
and you may never get off the phone.
That's okay. I think I can handle her.
But I want to reiterate the idea of getting our projects and stuff in a line.
Without regard
Just
to whether
forget
they're-
well, we still need to,
Right.
a suggestion, but forget about this one per se, other than talking to the mayor, because I believe there's other grants that are going to be coming out that we might be able to tap into for some of our, whether it's safe routes to schools, safe routes to parks, traffic safety, police. Every once in a while, there's grants that come available that might enhance there. We just have to be ready okay, and Debbie's suggestion about
Yeah.
having a draft, grant draft is a good idea. I know in talking with Heidi about safe routes, they're revamping completely right at the moment, so that once we get a draft of theirs, we can start filling in, because we already know there's some projects between Cummings and Kennedy that we'd love to do, and maybe even, between Cummings and stuff, we might even be able to get some of the speed flashy signs, because again, it's part of school.
Okay, so it sounds like we still want to have that list. We will have Jamie talk to the mayor about eligible projects for this grant. And will you still be working on the memo?
I'm going to talk to the mayor first, so
First.
I don't spin my wheels.
Okay,
But,
right.
okay.
You know, I do think, and that's, again, regardless of whether a project we propose would be eligible for this particular grant, I think we still do want to be, whether we present at the next council meeting or not, but be working on something that we can present to the council to say, these are the priorities that we've identified. We will be looking at finding funding sources for these things. And so we want to be ready to, if we identify one and a potential funding source, to be able to tee it up for quickish council consideration and approval or disapproval.
I think Stephen just said he'll go with me.
Happy to do it.
All right. Okay,
Well, again, you can just take this one. Yeah,
Thank you.
so we'll move on. And it looks like
Oh,
you, Jamie.
okay, Planning Commission report. So I did get to attend the Planning Commission committee last week, and very interesting stuff. They were really talking about House Bill 2001 and the code update that they need to do. What that entails, I think the easiest way to say is splitting property for smaller homes to be placed on it. That's all, I'll leave it at that. It was a long meeting of what they talked about. But it was very interesting. And personally for me, it was interesting to see how the cities are taking codes and really making sure that the information is correct. So that took up most of the meeting, but the reason why that was really talked about is, or the second thing that was really talked about was Verta Lane and the 100+ units that will be going into there over the next couple of years. And this is kind of all what we've been talking about as far as what we call the Cal Park. The plans are going to start working on that, so we're going to see that probably in 2 years. There's going to be a walkway that will happen there, and that makes me very happy because that was one of them that I had identified as something that we need. I'd of course like it to go further down, but at least it's a start, especially with how much it costs to do a mile's worth of sidewalk, right? Other than that, that was probably the two major things. They had a speaker come in really to talk a lot about the House Bill 2001. So good info.
Who was the speaker?
His name was...
Matt Hasty with Angelo Consult.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
Jamie, when at the planning, when people talk about the sidewalks on Verda, are we talking about both sides of the street or
No.
just the west side?
No, from what I understand is the build for the complex will have a walkway on just one side. So no, it's not two sides right now.
Okay, so we still have a major problem on Verda on the east side of the highway. Okay, so
Yeah.
when we're listing our major impediments to walking in Keizer, keep that one in mind. In fact, it's maybe one of the more dangerous ones in the city,
Yes.
because if you misstep there, you're gonna,
Yeah, you're in the street, you're
well,
catching
you're
the
in the,
bus.
no, you're in the
street.
ditch.
Yeah, there's a ditch on
Oh,
the
the ditch on the
east
other
side.
side, okay.
And I think we should watch it because it is a safe routes to school right there.
Yes.
Right,
So-
yeah, 3 blocks away.
I guess the only last two things that I'll bring up is I guess the 7-Eleven over by Keizer Station is opening up, I believe this week. And then they're still talking about Chick-fil-A. That's it.
Okay, well, thank you. So we'll do the committee member input. We'll start off with Wayne. You've been quiet.
Nothing new.
Okay.
I have a new hill.
All right. Stephen?
More just want an opportunity to canvass the committee about something. I was studying our committee charter, and I think I mentioned this to Debbie in the past, but one of our responsibilities is to develop and maintain a master bikeway plan to include an assessment of the need for bikeways, recommended routes with costs and priorities, proposed funding sources, and implementation program. And I was wondering if anybody who is currently on the committee knows of any such thing, whether it exists, whether it has ever existed.
Or should
The
you?
answer is yes, there has one, but it was in the late 90s. And part of the transportation plan includes bike facilities in it. And that's kind of been, instead of the SCAT's back, Bicycle Advisory Committee developed one. And that was the master one that Keizer used, but that's,
Outdated, yeah.
it's outdated, and a lot of the things recommended have been done too.
Is there maybe a chance that we want to bring it to this committee to review? For any
It's
possible
outdated.
update? That's what I'm saying.
It's way outdated. So we would, in effect, probably have to start over. But really, for bike facilities, Keizer on the whole is pretty good, other than our Great Barrier Reef called River Road.
Yeah.
And every one of our projects, Verda will have bike facilities, Planning for Wheatland will have bike facilities. Hopefully, when we go to Windsor Island, there'll be bike facilities. Keizer in Chamawa really did a great job for that improvement, and Cherry too.
Very good, that answers my question. And that's all the input I have.
Oh, I was looking forward to hearing about safe routes to school and the projects that we had going on. I'm ready to kind of pick that back up and start running with it, so I'm looking forward to them coming in next month. Other than that, it looks like I've signed myself up for a couple things, so.
Okay. Okay, for me, so we've already alluded to that letter that was about the top 5, bottom 5, however you want to name it, streets. Another thing, so at the last meeting, it was brought up as bringing, some type of safety measures that the city could possibly get some ARPA funds or some other funding for, including pedestrian islands. So in my report to council, I brought that up as, one of the topics that can't come up for discussion. It was brought up, as you remember, Councilor Kohler used to be our council liaison, and he was mentioning how when he had been on it, we talked about it, and it was brought up that pedestrian islands can be an impediment to emergency vehicles. As I recall, and I think it was, at least in my view, it was going to be on streets that are like Cherry, River Road, not even something like Chamawa or one of the more minor arterials and collectors. So one, I guess, is get the sense from the committee if they support something like these on our main arterials, especially like River Road, which, as we keep saying, is a very significant barrier east-west. And also mention how, and I've said this before, maybe not recently, but how we really should be looking to design our equipment around our city rather than our city around our equipment. I think you can see cities from New York to Jakarta that deal with fire trucks and emergency vehicles in dense cities. So I don't think we'd be reinventing the wheel on that one. But any sentiment on still supporting as money and projects become available, pedestrian islands on our main arterials?
Well, is Cherry considered an arterial? Right? I can't remember, I know River Road is.
Yeah.
Lockhaven, Chamawa.
It's a major.
And Lockhaven.
Lockhaven, Chamawa, River Road, Cherry. That's about it, right?
Yeah.
Verdict.
Based on our injury accidents for pedestrians, the street arterial is River Road.
It's the only one.
We just don't have the stats. the problem with the islands is not that I'm against them. It's that section of River Road towards Salem and how it narrows, and that anything we do, we're going to have to buy some right-of-way to do.
And you're talking about businesses.
We're going to have to, there's some sections there that are only 62 feet wide.
Right.
And the utilities are right in the travel lane. So any pedestrian improvement is going to require a little more money than just putting in a pedestrian path. And when I'm visioning pedestrian islands, I'm thinking of the one on Silverton Road close to Chemeketa, that style. That's going to take a little more money and a little more planning because the way River Road is designed in that section. It's not the city's fault. I know the county did that years and years and years ago, but we're stuck with it. And we're going to really have to be very, very innovative in how to do it. Now, about designing, our fire department is not part of the city, so they have to be partners in talking. That we can't just say, well, their equipment, they're different tax entities, so they're going to have to be partners in this, and I'm pretty sure that they would be good partners, but we do need to bring them in. So I don't want to shoot your idea, but it's going to cost a lot more than in other areas.
Sure, and
because of the way our Great Barrier Reef is designed.
Right. And my point at this point is really just to say that as a committee, that we still support the idea. We're not mixing the idea. Is that?
Yeah, my only problem with anything on River Road is it's going to be astronomically expensive. Otherwise, whose business are you planning on buying and destroying? And how many of them? Because there's no room to do some of the things we'd like. I was also up in Portland again a few times, and I noticed one of their great problems is 82nd Avenue, let alone there's some others, but that one, they haven't touched it since I lived there in the, never mind, it was last century. And they're finally starting to do something with it. But in the meantime, since they let that go to hell, they've made improvements all over the city. In fact, I was in some kind of almost not backwater, but smaller neighborhoods where they've done extensive work on sidewalks, bike lanes, traffic, slow down thingamajiggies. So, when you say, okay, we need to do something on River Road, yeah, but not at the cost of everything else you're going to do on Keizer for 20 years. So maybe a bunch of the smaller projects add up to being as or more important than trying to get people off River Road or slowing down.
Well, from a bicycling, commuting, that standpoint, I've always had the mind that because of River Road and its poor design, or that section, that we should continue to develop sideways. And we have the great Cherry Avenue, which takes us right into downtown Salem via the Bike Boulevard.
Yep.
On the other side, we need to just work a little bit more on Shoreline, Rivercrest on that, and paralleling that and coming out on Broadway, River Road back on that direction. I would love to have River Road in that section completely redesigned, even better than the north section. But we would eliminate a lot of businesses.
Afford it.
I just don't think our community could afford it. But we could afford it in increments.
And I understand what you're saying, David. I would also remind everyone that River Road really is our main street, even if we don't call it Main Street. And so we should be encouraging as we can access to it and across it as much as possible, so.
If I may interject, since I am one of the majors that do most of the investigations with our pedestrian crashes along River Road, 29 years now. I can still count on a couple of fingers. I think the benefit of a pedestrian crossway would actually help us. I think we're very unique on how River Road is designed for Keizer. And if we encourage people to cross outside of our major intersections, I think we're doing a disjustice. Excuse me. As far as that encouragement, I think we put people more at risk. A lot of our pedestrian crashes that we have had, unfortunately, are like right-hand turns and things like that inside of our crosswalks themselves. Our pedestrian fatalities that we've had, they've been DUI related, where they've been just blind running across streets where they would have never made any difference. We don't have any long areas along River Road where you're not coming to a lit intersection that's traffically controlled, unlike a lot of other cities where you do have these pedestrian crossways, where somebody has to go a half mile to actually try and cross an electronic signal. So the way River Road is designed right now, I would have to say I would strongly discourage it at this time. I just don't think encouraging pedestrians to try and cross River Road at any part besides our major intersection would be a reality, a safe reality anyway.
Yeah, I like what you're saying there, Sergeant Ledet, because if we're really trying to forward think, we really need to look at Verda, because with the new units going in, it's already packed in there. That little street that before the roundabout that you can turn left or right in, that is getting horrible. So forward thinking, what are we going to do? Because you can't really put us, not Keizer Road, what's Verda?
It's awful.
That's the name. Oh, that's the name of it? Okay, thank you. So I feel like if what we can do is the areas that we're putting more housing in and it's gonna get more dense there, we should look a little bit further ahead of looking at what they're going to do to make sure that this is calmed down so that nothing does become an issue there. This is a great opportunity, if you ask me, to really kind of look at something that hasn't even been started yet.
Right. And before I get onto that, I will just say that there are some significant stretches along River Road that are not signalized, and we do see people, especially on the south end of River Road, who are crossing already, and be it without lights, so be it jaywalking or whatever you want to call it, it is happening. And we can't ignore that that happens, and we can't ignore that there are, maybe not half a mile, but, if people felt like it was short enough distance to get to the next light to cross, they would do that. They wouldn't cross at, what gas station is that, down by the Abbeys? Shell. Yeah. So.
I think most of you know, I've been promoting walking and bicycling for a long time. On the other hand, I'm well aware that Keizer is an automobile community. Everybody has 2 cars, and they drive them all the time. Well, not all the time. Not at the same time. Not at the same time, but there are lots of traffic here, and it's a traffic community. There are a hell of a lot more cars than there are people walking on River Road. And so, if you want to be democratic about it, you serve the people in the cars first and then pedestrians second. And I hate to say that, but you can't, I forgot, how many, one of you would probably know how many cars go down River Road a day? I'm sure it's in the...
More fingers than I have.
Yes, more than 2 fingers. Anyway, so we have to take those people into account too. I get in my car and I drive to downtown Salem. I need to go down River Road. And then I'd like to get there efficiently. 35 seems to me a reasonable compromise. 30, 25 isn't, to me. So I grant you we need to protect the people, but there's lots of places to do it. And I'm not sure River Road's worth being a target. for the,
If we
money
don't
we
have,
have.
if we don't have the data of speeding and, you know, tickets, I see us going down a road that is gonna lead us nowhere, and I don't wanna go down that.
Well, but I would say, my thing would be thinking about it not only in terms of safety, and this probably is outside the brief of this committee, but making it a desirable place for people to be. Right now, it's just a desolate stretch of road with some businesses on each side, and it's not something that attracts people. It's something, if you need to go to a business, well, you know where you're going, or if you need to go from Salem north, or from the north end of Salem, you shoot down River Road. But it's the main street of the city, and it's just not anything that gives the city any character or any sense of, or a sense of community. It's just an addendum to Salem, basically, and so I think that, as I say, that may be outside the brief of the, we're a safety committee, maybe that's outside of our brief, but I do think that for people who are considering, well, what should River Road be? The fact that we've built a traffic arterial and then people are using it as a traffic arterial shouldn't be used to discount or militate against the idea of maybe we can do some other thing, that the community can do some other things with it. That's been sort of the history of traffic roadway design for the last century and a half is, well, let's cater to cars and not people, and River Road's sort of a prime example of that, so.
My opinion would be, you really have to look at the function of what the road needs to be. You know, an example of a place that does give a sense of community would be like 3rd Street in McMinnville. And that's cool, you know, but there's no way that section of 3rd Street is going to take the traffic numbers that have to use River Road. And so I think you really need to look at the function that the road has to provide and not try to change it.
Well, then
Not too
it's
much.
not our main road anymore. It's just a highway, is what you're saying.
You know, we can keep it as safe as we can, but it is a highway.
Yeah,
And to deny it, I mean, try and make it, well, Third Street in McMinnville is a good example. Because a lot of times that's what people say, oh, we want a city main street and we want it to look like 3rd Street.
Yeah.
Well, you can't. You have to kind of realize that. You can do some changes to River Road, but it's never going to be a small town main street,
We're not small town.
like you find in other places.
No, but-
The old city, like, I thought of McMinnville, and the first thing I thought of was 3rd Street, and I thought of their main drag that's up, whatever it is, it looks just like River Road.
99W.
Yeah, 99W looks just like River Road.
If I may just throw one more comment out there with what everybody else is saying out there as far as River Road goes. Remember, we're a city of almost 40,000 people, and we're a traffic safety committee. And if we take people off of River Road, we're gonna be putting them into the neighborhoods. And that's the issues that we're really trying to address right now. So I just wanna try and stay focused on what that safety aspect is.
Yeah, because if you've ever driven down Cherry at 5 PM or at 8 AM, it's pretty thick on that street too.
Yep, inverted.
To kind of defend River Road in a different way, and we can move off the subject, is you should have saw River Road when Mcnairy High School was in the championships. Almost every business along there had a go south side, and you really started to feel part of the town. So it's not the street, it's the businesses along that help make it a community. And in 2001 and 97, you were around, you saw all those signs.
I've got some pictures right here on my
Yeah,
phone.
so, you know, there are other ways besides just putting in good asphalt. So that's my 2 cents.
But obviously, we can't rely on the Mcnairy football team to.
Well, they're doing pretty good.
Yeah,
Well,
it's
we
been 20
could.
years. It's been 20 years.
All
So,
right.
you guys tonight.
So speaking of what you were saying about Verda, I sent out an email to everyone about, the project what's been going on now that ODOT is leading, having committee member input on that. And I don't know if the people who were here back when Pat and Kathy were still on the committee, we were talking about getting us more involved, at least have some input at the early stages of street and projects. And we had the one that Hirsch was on, which was great, but it's not part of the protocol.
I was on the Verda way back when.
Okay, and was that as a committee member?
Mhm.
Okay.
Like I said, the planning for this went way back to 12, way back.
And was that planning, like, this is how, everything we're gonna do to it? Or was it, this is kind of what we're looking, this is like a
It was kind of very
30,000?
similar to what we're doing with the Wheatland, where there was public input and such. That would have been way back when. I'm trying to remember the dates, but
What are we talking about?
Verda, Verda and its project. Mike, were you in?
Here, and I remember you doing that, but I don't.
Yeah, I can't, but the answer to these major projects we've been involved in just putting the wide section on Verda, this committee was involved.
The which section?
Hmm?
Which section on Verda?
The wide section because of the schools going in. That was a discussion that came up here. And again, it was kind of like on Delight, what do we do for the kids? Because their walk, back then, it was narrow on Verda. What do we do? Well, what they did was take the money from the bridge project, used that, and then saved for the bridge, which was on Dearborn, which was built later. But we were able to give input on that major project.
Yeah, well, and so it's not always just the major projects, though, I'm thinking like, even be it a striping thing, or where bike racks are gonna be put on in a development. Just something where early on, the city says, hey, this is what we're working on. Do you have any suggestions how it could go? Even striping for bike lanes, should we put, like I had that one time, a couple of meetings ago where, hey, can we put a buffered bike lane here? So I don't know if that needs to be a charter change to our committee or what.
Some of them are planning commission decisions.
Well, the bike park general location is supposed to be part of just a planning department checkbox. Like, yeah, it's within, what is it, 50 feet?
50 feet of the entrance.
Right. But then we have something like at the schoolhouse square by the Jersey
Yeah,
Mike's.
it technically is correct. The bike rack is 50 feet from an entrance, but there's several entrances.
Right.
And the coffee shop has no bike rack.
Right, so that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Technically correct, but maybe,
That's a policy change. Planning commission can change that.
right, but I'm talking about, so in general, not just, but identify, there's some input, like when we know that the city's gonna be having, I think, Mike, you said the county does the striping. We know it's coming up, say, on next year's list of work, and we say, hey, maybe we could have a buffered bike lane here. So I don't know, again, if that's where we have to have some type of council approval, where we are involved in these things early on, or what? Does anyone know?
That's right.
Mike, do you know?
No, I was just gonna say, even your buffered bike lane deal is not something that you just call the county and say, hey, we're gonna do this, and we just add it to the docket and do. I mean, we do the same striping, the same legends, and the same things yearly, and definitely, those are good ideas, but it's not something, I mean, there's a little thought needs to be put into it and needs to be brought up. There needs to be some funding. And you presented a couple of things like on Lockhaven, I think near 7-Eleven, or some different ideas. And how you go about doing that. Again, you've deemed the project necessary, you've brought it to our attention, and then money provided, that's something that will be added. It's no, other than that, it's kind of straightforward with the striping and different things like that. These are contracts, we do these, and we go from there, so.
Right, but I guess, how do we get in the conversation early enough that then we can then say to the city council, hey, in this project that you normally spend X dollars, we're asking for X plus whatever to do an additional buffer or something something like that. How does it become a regular part of the process?
Work for the city?
Well, I'd say that's the problem. We're here to help to provide and advise, yeah.
Give them, listen.
Falling on deaf ears.
So, I don't know, Councilor Day, do you know if that needs to be some type of council change to our charter?
Well,
I don't know how that works.
I feel like we're kind of all over the board here. So I'm not quite sure what you want to be able to say, hey, we've got a little extra paint, let's go out and paint a buffer for bikes. Just randomly?
No, I'm saying, so if Mike comes to us and says, okay.
Who? I'm sorry?
Mike
Okay.
comes to us and says, in 2023, we're going to repaint the lines on, let's just say Lockhaven, from River Road to McLeod.
Okay.
And when we said, okay, that's great. That's one of the places maybe that we could have a buffered bike lane. Because you haven't allotted the funds to that yet. It's still far enough in advance. Now we can tell the city, hey, this is where we'd like to see the buffered bike lanes, for example.
They can say yes or no.
And they can say yes or no, but it at least becomes part of the conversation before money has been allotted to something.
I think I understand where you're going, and I think that's 100% within the jurisdiction of this committee in terms of, advising the city council. We think that, it makes sense to put a buffered bike lane here, or bike lane, or whatever you want to do. But understand that in consideration of that, the council not only is going to take into consideration what this committee decides or advises them on, but also, what Public Works tells us. Does this comport with our TSP? Those sorts of things. So I think I understand what you're saying, and yeah, that's something that I think is appropriate, but it's not gospel, if that makes sense. So I mean, but I also don't know, this is a question for Public Works, I don't know if they have that information that they're able to share with you that far in advance, is the other issue.
Right.
I get what you're asking, but these are yearly maintenance that we do.
Right.
And so it's on a schedule, it's a budgeted item, and it's like there's a line item in the budget under streets, and okay, we got that one, and here's what it is. We know roughly what that's gonna be, so anything aside from that would be something you'd put together. And again, like other projects that you've talked about, from sidewalks to solar speed signs and so on and so forth, I put that right up there with that one. It's like, hey, I've identified an area, can we get some funds to do that, I guess. And I don't know if a buffer bike lane takes acquiring any right away. I don't know if it's something you just add off to the side of the road. The lanes are so wide. I don't know what all that involves.
Yeah, and I don't want to get wrapped around the wheel on just the buffered bike lanes. I guess what my point is, if the city is going to have a project and they know the project is happening in 2 years, 3 years, that's where they'll be working on the funding for that project. If we, and like we said this before, if we can hear about it in the early stage of it, there we can put in any.
We have
any
the option
ideas.
of making a recommendation.
Right, because rather than saying, just coming with like what we're doing with the blinking lights, where we're just saying, hey, these are the areas we'd like to do it, but you don't have anything going there. The city is planning on doing something there. Can we piggyback on that?
And I understand what you're saying. So right now, the most recent one we have coming is the Verta Lane one, and that's pretty much figured out what's going on there with the widening and with the sidewalks and the bike lane and the vegetated swales possibly. Again, next one coming up, whatever that may be, definitely somehow figure out how to involve you or have me keep you apprised of what's going on, get an idea what it's going to look like, and then present, whether it be your ideas, to me, or go from there. But I understand what you're saying.
Okay. So I'm gonna
Bring
wrap
it up
myself
again
up.
next week.
Yeah.
Same issue.
Same bat channel.
I was gonna ask if I heard, was it last week, the kid was hit, it was on a bicycle, had an incident with a car on 14th and Lockhaven. Was that ever reported to the police, or?
Yeah, it was investigated, and it was way blown completely out of proportion.
Well, that's,
Kid had a panic attack. It actually wasn't an impact with the vehicle itself.
okay. The other thing I heard, again, I would double check, is don't we normally have a crossing guard there, and I take it he wasn't there, that he or she
That is
wasn't
correct.
there? Okay, and my question was, are the crossing guards volunteers, or are they
They're
employees of
paid
the school
staff from
district?
the schools.
So if he's an employee of the school district, then the principal of that building is responsible for either putting somebody there or not, I guess.
I'm not
I mean,
sure.
I worked in schools forever, we had those issues, and somebody was in charge, so if you don't hire a substitute, you don't have,
It's hard to get them right now.
Well,
Well,
right now, I
that's
know there's
another
staffing
issue,
issues,
you
so
know?
I'm not sure if that had anything to do with it or not.
Okay, all right.
Did you say it was a panic attack? Is that?
Well,
He had a scare.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah.
And then this happened. The other question I had, I guess it was more just in general, when we have bike lanes throughout the city on various streets, not always logical where they are and where they're not, you can tell what people, the drivers with cars, do by how much paint is left this time of year on the striping. And so when all the striping's gone on the bike lane, because people have been driving on it, obviously, it may be an issue. If nobody's been hit, maybe it's not. And then I wondered, when do the bike lanes end? Because I don't see any signage that says, yeah, we're on a bike lane. Oh, no, we're not. Because it makes a difference of how I ride my bike.
Besides the legend on the ground, which should be every street, when you hang a right, you should see some there on a marked bicycle lane. And if you see a lot of streets around town that are not marked, they're under 5 feet, and technically it's not a bike lane, so that's why you won't see something there. And I know along Wheatland Road, because we're going to be redoing that here, down the road here, there's some really old signs on the east side that have like say bike only with a little triangle.
Yeah.
And I've been trying to kind of figure out what those are. They're really old and they've been slowly disappearing, and so that's on our list. But I know that'll be addressed, in the project coming up, so.
I was thinking in some corners you could tell that the bike lane's been violated, repeated, because there's no bike lane marks. They disappear in the corners.
I think nowadays standard is you put bike lane ends, but that's moving forward where we're going, but other than that,
Okay, and then one other little comment, I was in North Portland last week, Northeast Portland, I guess, up in the Albina area. They've put, what do you call them, bollards? Anyway, these little white pipes that stick up in the air about 3 feet, but if you hit them, they bend over and they flop. They put them on all the corners in that region to keep the bike lane intact at each corner, so people couldn't cut the corner when they were taking right turns. That was just interesting. It makes the street, you like this one, it made the street a lot narrower.
Well, I've thought about doing that because, as you say, you can see where people take a really tight turn to the curb rather than curve it. Even going to a left lane, you'll see people, the yellow lane
But
stripe.
the other piece of that is, if you're in these areas, like, especially around Portland and Eugene, you don't know, I mean, the bicycle traffic is heavy.
Right.
There's almost as many bikes in some streets as cars.
Well,
Anyway,
just remember that was built by the decisions they made. That didn't just happen overnight.
well, there's other
So.
streets, like the 82nd, yeah. Okay,
All right, thank you. Rick?
I gotta go pick up my daughter.
Anything?
No, nothing.
Hirsch?
Yeah, just a couple things. One, to Officer Sergeant Leday, the cyclist that was killed on the Parkway. I know it was Salem's jurisdiction.
All Salem's.
Yeah. My understanding is the cyclist was going through and the 18-wheeler had the green light. And the cyclist.
Yeah, I don't know any personal details on that specific case. I mean, whatever the media's released would be as much as I know also.
Yeah, that was last Friday.
That's what I read too, that the cyclist was going against the signal.
And with that, I bring up an issue that I have seen, especially involve in my cycling around town and elsewhere. The new bike law about cyclists and the stop signs and traffic control devices. My personal belief is it has been misunderstood and misaligned, where cyclists feel that the stop sign, some cyclists, I shouldn't say all cyclists, feel that traffic control devices do not apply to them anymore. Now, I'm not saying that that's what applied here, but that's my feeling, and I think it's something we, as a committee, at least in our bike education stuff, have to address.
I would agree.
It just, I know what the legislature was trying to do, bless their hearts, but I think the message came out wrong. And hopefully in January or February, whenever we can get Heidi here, that's one of the subjects I want to bring up with her, because she has a role, or her department has a role in education. So the other thing is an old issue that since kids are coming back to school again, and I'm going to bring it up, and we've already talked about crosswalks, but I'm going to bring it up again. Crosswalk on Lockhaven at Mcnairy. Kids are what's happening, or what I have seen, is there are kids that live on the north side of Lockhaven, not so much in the estates, but in inland shores and such, and they're crossing. Parents not wanting to drive into Mcnairy, because it is crowded at those times, are pulling into the bike lane, letting the kids off, and they're crossing River Road. I still think we should think about just a simple crosswalk there. I know that crosswalks are not safety zones, but kids are doing it. And they were doing it 4 years ago. Now they're doing it again, which is almost natural. I brought it up. I'm going to talk about that till we, I know the Mcnairy principal will support it, but it is a budget item, and I know something like that can't. But we need everybody's support to move ahead on that. And I have no idea what a unit would cost. Probably similar to the one at, that would be, they're at Keizer Elementary, but just one at the one side. That would be the west side of McNairy's entrance behind the football field.
So are you talking about a speed sign, or are you talking about just a crosswalk?
Just a crosswalk.
That would be the time that I would say, when Mr. de Blasio was talking about the island crosswalk, so to say, that protected crosswalk.
That would be
That would
one-
be a potential area that I would say, that would be designed for it, unlike River Road.
Yes,
Mhm.
I agree. I just made a note of that too.
Oh, we talked about it. Fact is, there was a parent that came in, oh gosh, that may be before you were on the committee, Mike, that wanted one, and it just, things didn't just gel. But I watched it this week, and parents are, I don't want them in the bike lane, but as a parent, I would have done the same thing. Because instead of driving into Mcnairy, they're in their kids walking and stuff. So that's one area that I'd like to pursue. It may take time, but we want to pursue it. And another thing, and McCray and I will be working on this one, but this committee needs to help too, is either to, especially this spring, do bike helmet fitting. And David just put in a grant request from the Salem Bike Club because of the Monster Cookie for some more money. We got plenty of helmets, and maybe a bike skills fair here at City Hall with Officer Leday riding a tandem with me. He's not listening. But we, with the kids back, I think we should plan some bike skill event for kids and target probably spring. Because right now it's very hard to pull things. My daughter, is a third grade teacher, and having the kids gone for so long, it's like restarting. So spring.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, I'm making notes as far as what agenda to put that on as a reminder. How early in the year do you want to start discussing that?
Let's do January.
Okay.
Because it takes a couple months, and then working with our two safe routes to schools and McCray, we want to have some time. And a lot, bike month is May or April kind of things.
Michael, I was just looking here at the location there at McNairy's back door, just a very short distance west of there is where there's already the crosswalk with crossing guards, the entrance into Keizer School. Maybe there's an opportunity of like going halfway between or something like that to combine those two. Doesn't seem like it'd be a good idea to have the existing one to Keizer School and then a very short distance east of there having another one for McNairy, when you could maybe combine them, maybe do the islands, and each group of students would have to walk a slight distance laterally before they cross, but it's not very far at all between those two.
Oh, Rick, that's a better idea than I had, because I was gonna say start giving jaywalking tickets.
You were gonna say what?
Giving jaywalking tickets.
We have a whole conversation on that. So, and getting back to my, people who can think I have stock in paint, but getting back to my paint idea, maybe because of the two schools with main crossings there, have some type of paint / landscape where possible, signal to drivers that this is an area that you have to be well alert for, and
There's the flashing light for Keizer. They have, for the elementary school, they have a crossing guard. Now, under state rules, the high school doesn't fall under that same category, but they are in fact being dropped off there on the north side and are walking across, as well as kids from the Inland Shores area walking across. Now, where the one is at Keizer Elementary, that is actually part of a walkway that goes across the street and around to Windsor Island. It's part of a safe routes to school walk. Where the apartments are on Windsor Island, there's a crosswalk there with lights with a crossing guard. And that's part of a walkway for Keizer Elementary kids. High school, at least the regs that I looked at really don't, it's more for the wee ones than the high school, but we have a 6A size high school right there. And the other side is, we've done a pretty good job of making traffic and bike and walk improvements. I'm just thinking on the other side.
Good Dearborn.
On Chihuahua,
Chihuahua, yeah.
Chihuahua.
Yeah.
And Lockhaven would be the only one. And I'd still like to keep two because of the elementary kids and their crosswalk guard. And one for the high school, but I wouldn't really want to spend millions for it. But Lockhaven, it was designed as a possible state highway way back in the late 70s.
Right. And it still looks good.
But that's, I'm just setting the seeds now.
Okay. All right.
You sought the seed.
So, are you all done?
Yeah, oh
Okay.
yes, I'm sorry.
No. So, Mike, we'll bounce over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, just the only thing I have is Knife River, who did the dig outs for us along Windsor Island Road from Lockhaven to Shamawa, finished their project up this week and did their final cleanup and did some pavement markings and some striping, and they are out of there, and that project is in preparation for this coming resurfacing list that we're busy putting together right now. So that's my report.
Thank you, yeah. Sergeant Ledet, anything?
Sure, the only thing I have is we actually received 4 grants again this year. We got $5,000 for our seatbelt grant, $5,000 for our high visibility enforcement, which is our DUI grant, another $5,000 for speed enforcement, and $7,000 for distracted driving enforcement. And so those funds are specifically for overtime enforcement for our guys.
And how long does that last?
It starts October 1st, and that lasts through September 30th.
Okay.
So we just spread times out throughout that aspect of it.
Okay. All right, thank you. Council Day.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of things. First of all, to answer the question about Chick-fil-A, because just about everybody on the council asks Shane Witham what's going on with that. The hangup was at the county. My understanding is that everything's been resolved, but they probably, we're not entirely positive when they're going to be breaking ground. But my understanding, at least what we were told last, was that they've got a lot of the red tape behind them and they're about ready to move on. So hopefully soon.
Do you know where the area is gonna be?
Yes, so you know where the new 7-Eleven and gas station is? So it'll be west of there.
Okay.
They're gonna have a 2-lane drive-through, and so yeah, and our big the issue was they had a wetland water feature that was supposed to be one section, and it was more efficient if they moved it somewhere else, and so that's basically what happened. That's what the hang-up has been. On Monday, the Long Range Planning Task Force will be meeting by Zoom, and the subject is the ARPA funds. So if anybody, I encourage people to tune in. I'm sure it'll be riveting as we try and figure out.
Well, you and I will be on, so.
I know we will. Yes. And as we try to figure out exactly what we're going to do with the money that we received through ARPA, and then last but not least, so one of the long range goals of I don't know if it's long range or short range, the lists are behind me, is to for the council was to put together a training program for committees, committee chairs, committee members. Councilor Kohler and I have been tasked with putting that program together, and we've been working diligently on it. I would expect that we'll probably have something to the council by, say, January, and hopefully approved, if not by the end of January, then the beginning of February. And we anticipate what we'll be doing is going to each of the committees and conducting a training for each one of the committees, how to run a meeting, how to run a meeting efficiently, how to use your time wisely, that kind of stuff. So we expect that those will be sometime begin March or April of next year. So just something to put on your radar that will be coming down the pike. So that's all I have.
All right, well, thank you very much. Okay, that being said, our next meeting will be November 18th, and reporting to council still, and as well as attending the planning commission, will be Wayne. And so the council meeting is November 1st, planning commission will be November 10th.
Mr. Chair,
Yes?
if I may, Wayne is not going to be with us after our November meeting if we don't meet in December. And we recruited for his vacant position and David's. David reapplied for his, but we still have a vacancy for Wayne's position. So if anybody here knows somebody who might be interested in serving on this committee, let them know. Go on our website and fill out an application, or come in and pick one up and fill it out manually. Either way works.
Okay, so you were saying November will be his last meeting?
If we don't, usually we don't meet in December.
Right.
His term does not end until the end of December. So if we meet in December, he'll still be here. But if we don't, then it'll be November will be his last meeting.
Thank you for bringing that up. I've been on traffic committee for 2 terms, and it was 6 years. And I'm about done with traffic.
Well, it's been great to have you. Hopefully we'll be seeing you riding around your bike.
I hope so too. We're bright yellow.
Yeah. And we'll have to have some little going away thing for you at the next meeting. We'll have to figure out what we can do. I don't know. Does the city have any goodbye fund or anything like that for committee members? Or is it just there's the door and see you later?
We've never really done anything before other than just the committee members saying thank you.
Okay.
Are there any monster cookies left? Like, one of those?
Oh, God, we wouldn't want those left.
You can use them as spare time.
Yeah.
All right, well, we'll see what we can do, but thank you, and we'll adjourn.